The iPhone 12 is basically my first encounter with any proper Apple product, unless you're counting my iPod Nano from like 2012, but let's not for this video. On top of that, I don't own any AirPods, a MacBook, an Apple Watch, anything, so I kind of just went in standalone with the iPhone blind out of curiosity. So this will be an interesting one. Let's get it. Design is something I always start off with, and it's kind of perfect to start with it here because I'm absolutely digging the design of the iPhone 12. It's also my favourite looking non-pro iPhone that's come out so far, so it kind of already gives it a head start in my opinion, but I do just really like it. The flat sides are usually the perfect place to start slandering this design, but call me crazy, this is a damn comfy phone. These sides feel really planted in my hand, more than say the slab of butter that was the OnePlus 8 Pro I came from. It feels a lot more grippable, even though it's still a glass and aluminium sandwich, which only gives you so much confidence, especially with no case, but I actually felt somewhat alright still rocking this thing caseless, which, you know, I don't do very much. The buttons are not the clickiest, but they're in a good spot. They don't feel loose or tacky, they're just really solidly in place, and they feel pretty nice. The mute switch, again, feels sturdy, makes a nice click, and I mean, who's complaining about having an extra bit of, you know, physical button on a phone? It's always nice to see. The way this thing's built, very clean, minimal, barely any labels on the body. The way the colours match between the back glass and the metal sides, I like a lot. The screen on the iPhone 12 is dead easy to wrap up. The best way I can describe it is it's unremarkable but consistent, in the sense that nothing's really jumped out at me in the time I used it, but in the same way it hasn't really done anything wrong either. It's been fine for any situation. Max brightness is solid, is a little dim in direct sun, but any HDR content on Instagram and YouTube looks lovely. There's more than enough pixels at this size as well, it's definitely a sharp screen. It's also, dare I say, bordering on compact these days. It's not quite a one-handed screen, but it's almost one-handed at 6.1 inches. The screen's colours are great, a little warm on the whites, but no issues. One thing I could call a standout here are the bezels. They're perfectly even all round, although the sides are just thicker to match the chin, but it definitely still looks impressive when you turn it on, even if it is kind of cheating, because the sides are a bit thicker. Even so, this form factor has aged pretty well. The screen still looks very clean, even today. And on the first couple uses, while the notch was there, and it's quite wide, so it did eat into full screen video quite a lot and full screen apps. As with any other screen intrusion, 10 minutes later, I didn't really notice it anymore, it kind of just faded into my peripherals. Okay, from the jump, I'll be honest, performance had me very intrigued because iPhones especially have a very high amount of praise for how their performance and how fast they are varies over time, and this 3.5-year-old iPhone 12 is kind of the perfect testament to this because it runs real good. The A14 Bionic in here, 4 gigs of RAM, absolutely fine, shows how much headroom this thing had back in 2020 and still has today. Loading times have stayed short, even for heavier apps and a couple games, and to be fair, pretty much anything I've thrown at this thing has been able to handle it well. Overall, if I had to describe this phone's performance, I'd say it's conservatively fast feeling. This chip definitely feels like it has more in the tank than whatever you end up using on the day-to-day, and you probably won't end up using most of it, but it also does feel like a powerhouse of a chip, and it still is. The A14 Bionic's held up really well, I need to stress that. I have seen occasional lag and slowdown in spottifying the camera, for example, but when I say occasional, I do mean that. It's very rare to see this phone sort of stutter badly. Another thing, maybe even the best bit of the entire phone, the sustained performance here, nuts. This phone runs as well with 20 apps open as it does with one. This iPhone 12 feels like it has a very, like a set level of speed out the gate when you start using it, and then obviously more and more apps that you pull up. It never really feels like it dips, if at all, under that set level of speed. It feels like it's very good at kind of maintaining that speed, where Android seems to plummet quite quickly with this multitasking, maybe just in my experience, but the iPhone didn't see any of that. It seems to fall off a lot less quickly than Android does, so I was really impressed with that. And for people who say that 60Hz on the iPhone is the smoothest, I hear it, I do hear it. Coming from 120Hz on Android especially, the consistency of the 60Hz here is very on point. Some animations here do still feel a little less buttery than others. For example, the scrolling animation is really fluid. The control panel is less fluid. They're a little mismatched, but overall, the experience of 60Hz animations on the iPhone is really, really good. iOS. What's it saying to a semi-diehard Android man like me? Well, let's start off with what I liked about it. First off, animations. It's hard to describe, but iOS seems to do a really good job of allowing animations to not just finish, but also seamlessly flow into other animations really well, which just helps the software feel a lot more continuous. Another huge one, app optimization, especially on social apps. I'm going to use Snapchat and Instagram as examples here. You can absolutely feel how spoiled rotten the iPhone is here, and it's not even funny. It's just so much better on the iPhone. It's just annoying at this point to me because I feel like I've been missing out this entire time. The iPhone just even on the 3-year-old 12, it just breezes through menus, app opening times, sending messages, opening the camera, swiping between different screens, opening and closing times, everything just buttery. Yeah, it's really, really good is what I'm saying. Features in these apps too are a lot richer on the Apple end. Instagram stories let you change their background color regardless of what you're posting. Reels start from where you left them if you scroll back up to one, which is actually really nice to see. Adding a video post to your story is near enough instant on the iPhone. I think I just slowly came to appreciate the feel of iOS. You know, the gradual unblurring of the backgrounds as you go home, or the untethered feeling of each app in the recents menu where it feels very free and laid back. It's the way it all felt to interact with, and that for me is what made it so nice to use. I did also find a couple things I didn't like too much. For one, I think handling notifications is better done on Android than on the iPhone. I feel like Android just gives you more options for different types of notifications and actions as well, like snoozing. And in my experience, this iPhone also forgot to clear notifications from the lock screen even after I'd opened the apps that these notifications came from, which was a bit frustrating. I felt the lack of individual volume controls, the fact you gotta go into settings and then sound and then find the volume, when on Android it's all doable from whatever screen you're on, and there's loads more options for which volumes you want to control too. I also don't get why location can't be added to the control panel. Like, surely it's one of the most used things on your phone, and it'd be kind of nice if I could toggle it on and off from where I can with literally every other thing on the phone. It's just a bit frustrating. Customization too is improving here, but it's still nowhere close to Android, especially skins like Oxygen OS, for example. There's not a whole lot on offer here apart from the lock screen widgets and the clock styles, but what is here I will give Apple is high quality. I didn't even pick this phone up with the intention of just digging deep into iOS and going through every single feature and comparing it with Android. I just wanted to see if it could do everything I did on my Android before as seamlessly as I could have done it on an Android, and for the most part, for like 95% of use cases, it was pretty much just as good and it worked fine, so I was satisfied. The speakers on the iPhone 12 are a little quiet, but do have a very surprising amount of bass for their size. They're also just pretty well tuned. They focus on the low end very well. They don't distort too much if you max them out either. They can get a little harsh on your ears, admittedly, at high volumes, but overall, they are great speakers. The haptics are fantastic. I wouldn't put them a league above Google's in terms of quality, but they're used all over the UI, even in third-party apps like Spotify, which, again, makes interacting with iOS just a little bit more scrumptious. Face ID, also really seamless. I got used to it in the first few days, and then kind of just became second nature after that. It's reliable, way more consistent than the optical fingerprint scanners that I've gotten used to, and at 2 AM, it's nice to not worry about your face being lit up or anything. You just pick it up and you're in. Battery life on the iPhone 12 has been friggin' impressive, not just for the fact that it's only got, by today's standards, a pretty tiny 2815 mAh battery, but also the fact that that battery is 3 years old at this point. On a light day, I was getting maybe like 4.5, 5.5 hours of screen on time with like 30 to 40% left at the end of each day, which is kind of nutty to be honest. But on heavier days I could kill it pretty quickly, and it did get pretty warm in the process as well. The standby time as well was really impressive, superb actually. I put this thing down on say 69% for the night and I'd wake up and it's on 65%. 4% overnight drain is mad, especially at 3 years old. Finally, we got these cameras and I didn't spend much time on them, so I didn't have too much to go off, but in the time I had, I shot some really solid photos. I noticed the 12 has a kind of contrasty look in these. The colours are a bit muted for my liking. I prefer a bit of punch personally, but they are true to life, and as far as I saw, noise is well controlled, colour accuracy is reliable, and they're detailed. HDR is not bad, but not super aggressive. Again, I don't mind this untouched, darker look, but I do prefer the overcooked processing from pixel photos. Then again, they're still consistently good photo cameras, just not my favourite. Moving to low light, it's pretty much the same story. The night mode here is very good at keeping noise low while crisping up details and brightening the entire scene, which it strikes a really good balance in, I gotta say. There's fantastic colour accuracy in the dark as well. I also enjoyed the selfies here. They're the same quality as the main cameras, and the night mode selfies are some of the best I've taken hands down. On top of this, I had the options for stuff like portrait mode in apps like Snapchat because they use the native camera feed itself, and this also means full fat photo processing in third-party apps, which is lovely, means you get the native camera performance and quality, both of which are great. And lastly, video, again, limited usage here, but from what I saw, low noise, well stabilized, what you see is pretty much what you get. Low light video performs nicely. Maybe the best bit is the video output looks almost as good as the photos do. My only gripe is because the phone shoots multiple streams of video at once and merges them, sometimes there's a few processing errors where it kicks out a really bright patch where it's, trying to decide how to handle that bright spot and it will look a bit funky, but that's a minor qualm, still a very consistent video camera. Verdict for this phone then. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. Everything works as you'd expect, it's very dependable. I've been really impressed with the battery efficiency, the way the speakers sound, the consistency of the cameras, the way iOS feels, and the performance and how well that's held up too. I have honestly missed some aspects of this phone after switching from it back to Android. Overall though, I am still willing enough to use Android as my daily driver, even though probably in a few ways the grass may be greener here on the iPhone. So the real question is, would I switch to this? Not just the 12, but any iPhone? Nah, not now, but in the future, we'll have to see. Anywho, that's it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.